Hello, and welcome to another very special episode of the Sales Ops Demystified podcast. Today, we're joined by Hank Taylor, who is the VP of Marketing, also involved in revenue operations and marketing ops for Vercel. Hank, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I actually am the VP of Marketing and Revenue Operations.
Amazing. So my first question to you, Hank, is you have a very illustrious career on the West Coast in revenue/marketing ops for various different businesses. At which point did you decide that the ops function supporting revenue was the thing that you really wanted to do?
Actually, very early on, although as you pointed out, I've bounced around a lot. So my first job in tech was at MySQL, which was the first billion-dollar open source acquisition. I was just an intern, though. I didn't really contribute much, but this was back when lead generation. So lead generation from an intern at MySQL was literally me identifying the fastest growing websites at the time, going to the website. I was too squeamish to go to the adult themed ones. So I made a decision as an intern that we're not selling to those. I would scroll to the bottom and there was somebody called a webmaster. And back then, in 2007, 2008, webmasters just put their emails and sometimes their phone numbers, something you would never publish on your homepage. I would copy paste those to a spreadsheet and give that to sales. And that was kind of my first taste. But I guess when I really leaned in, I was actually an SDR later on at a company called Pentaho. And I was qualifying a lot of inbound inquiries and trial starts. And the way I rose to the top as a performer was not because of particularly good sales skills. It was because I figured out, instead of storing all my drafts like everybody else does in a Word doc, I can store my email templates in this thing called Salesforce. And I can, every time I see a new title come in, I'll write a new draft. And pretty soon I had 60 templates. And with 3 clicks, I could send an email faster than anybody else. And it was more personalized than anybody else's emails. So my results were really good. And I realized, okay, I'm probably not going to go into the sales thing, but there's something about this technology and automation and process that's really interesting. And that's when I started leaning in. So my next couple jobs were sales operations after that.
So you got the taste for how much more effective a rep can be using technology. And then you realized that you were good. It impacted your performance as an SDR. And then you're like, okay, this is the thing for me.
Exactly.
Amazing. And let's zoom in now to today, if possible. Could you just give us a flavor of the RevOps team, the size, and also then the size of the sales or marketing team that you're supporting?
Yes. The size is interesting because a year ago, it was just me. We had actually very little in terms of everything. Since then, I had no headcount. We had little resources. Buying software was kind of a fight. And we had, actually, it was the anniversary this week of our second sales rep after the CRO. So we had a team of basically 3 sellers and me supporting them in both terms of marketing and RevOps. So we're lean. Since then, we've raised over 140 million. I now have on my revenue operations team, we have 6 people and headcount for about 5 more. So I am hiring. If anybody wants to hit me up on LinkedIn. Fun fact, I'm linkedin.com/in/revenue ops. So easy to find me. And on that team, about half of them are dedicated to technology and the platforms, and half of them are dedicated to analysis and process design. And now we're supporting a team of 9 sales reps, also with a lot more headcount, a lot more growth to go.
Of course, if we have job descriptions, we'll put them below this audio or below this video that you're watching if you do want to check out the roles. And yes, loving the LinkedIn URL is linkedin.com/in/revenue ops. Hank, since you have been growing the revenue operations team over the past year, what do you think has been the most impactful change or initiative the team has made?
That's a powerful question. So in today's trends in marketing are around PQLs, right? Product qualified leads. And this is essentially it's, behavior scoring models is kind of one way to think about it. If you go into like the language from a decade ago, how they would talk about this. A lot of what we've done that's been very useful is tying together and integrating our product data and putting it into the CRM, making it available, searchable, reportable by ourselves and the sales reps. Some of the sales reps who are more savvy with tools then have figured out how to really utilize this data. And it's really fun to have those kind of pioneers, because my mandate to my team is always, look at that pioneering AE and then automate everything that they do and take away what makes them special and give it to everybody else and force them to be special in a different way, which we can then copy and replicate. So probably tying together that product data with the lead and contact and sales data is the most impactful thing we've done.
That is a fascinating way to view process improvement within sales. Find the best performing one, take what they're doing, automate it to give that to democratize that excellence, and then
it's important to do because there's often friction between sales ops or rev ops and sales when the revenue operations team wants to prescribe process and data administration without persuading, doing it, selling the value to the salespeople, right? And especially in young organizations, where it's kind of the wild west. One of my employees has a saying, "No parents, no rules." It's kind of how things are when you're this small and growing this fast. But if you can get the sales team to say, "Oh, we want that process. We do want you to prescribe the process. Tell us how our peer is succeeding," and get that peer as a champion, prop them up, show the rest of the team that, hey, they're winning because of this. Here's like the data to show it. Now here's the technology and process to help you do the same. You don't have to be a Salesforce wizard or whatever to be successful at sales. Like, that's our job, to enable you.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. And you summed up like a lot of other themes I've had from other guests, but like in a very eloquent way. Amazing. Hank, thank you for the first half of the interview. We're now going to bring in my wonderful co-host, Alex, to dig a little bit deeper.
Thanks, Tom. And thank you. Thanks, Hank. I think I'm still processing some of that, so I haven't turned it into questions quite the way I'd hope. But fascinated by that last piece, and just really wanted to dig a bit deeper. So helpful to think. As you said, process can easily be clunky. It can be unwelcome. it can take a while to work, even if it's all good. And just that way of saying, well, let's take the process that's already been done, even if it's informally, and let's just make it into a process, and particularly to pass on that winning. Like obviously it helps with effectively the selling it into the team, but also the confidence that it's going to work. And particularly when it comes to driving, it sounds like in this case you're driving efficiencies. That those reps that are doing really well with the data would presumably spending a fair bit of their time in the CRM, getting hands-on, figuring out what to do. And so you weren't just adding an extra layer of bureaucracy. You're making things more efficient and taking time. Is that a fair reflection of how that worked?
Yeah, and part of it is recognizing as well that, well, hey, not everyone can or wants to do, what that rep who's excelling is doing. And so finding other ways to get that work done, because you still want everyone to have the maximum amount of pipeline and the maximum close rates, et cetera. So, a good example of that might be, we recently started what we're calling the product advocate team. They're essentially technical SDRs who can sift through a lot of the stuff in Salesforce. We have a high lead volume. We have an open source product, so there's a lot of data, and we can't fairly ask every AE to become an expert on sifting through data. We want them having those persuasive discussions. Like, persuasive dialogue is the whole purpose of a sales rep. So that's kind of what we optimize for.
Great, that's really helpful. And then the other piece that I was particularly intrigued by is this idea of getting this product usage data into Salesforce, and it seems like a big challenge for lots of people in a number of ways. Sometimes it's not very easy to figure out what actual usage is. Some products make it easier to know. If you're putting information on a web page, a bit harder to sometimes figure out. You've got a view and a click maybe, but the other piece is when usage tends to be quite complex, because there's so many different things that people are using, how you can put it in a usable format, particularly if that's trickling down to your frontline salespeople who are presumably going to be slightly less concerned in some of the nitty-gritty. So any tips or suggestions of how you accomplished that and how you kind of architected that project?
Yeah, the tip is start small. We're still not complete. There's still a lot of types of usage data. Vercel actually has several different products that you can monetize once you're on a paid account, and a ton of other indicating features and actions people can take, and activation metrics. So we focus on the ones that we've intuited are the most impactful, the ones where there are limits that we need to be tracking, so that we can quickly identify without help from engineers as much, on, this team has an overage on, their monthly usage, like they're out of compliance. They either need to, so we can reach out. So you either need to reduce, or let's get you on an enterprise plan and get you support, whatever. So start small, do one thing at a time, get it right, get the feedback, make the changes. That's my advice there.
Great, thanks. And the other thing would be, so in the case of an open source and project where, again, you said, going product led, obviously the importance of usage in the sales process is relatively obvious. What do you sort of oversee in terms of the customer, success side, and how have you got any eyes on sort of retention and growth once you've kind of really rooted into an account using those metrics?
Yes, our customer success side is really good. I have had the fortune of having a wonderful head of customer success here at the company, who is pretty savvy, and because of my low headcount, I haven't been able to support him too much. He, of course, wants a lot more support, but he's done pretty well on his own. And we've done a lot together to get our data together. we migrated a lot of his data into Salesforce Service Cloud, and now we have a more unified CRM and customer support data. We're also trying out some other tools, but with the data available to them, what's interesting is his team's a technical team. They're engineers. They have to be customer support engineers. So they can use a lot of the more direct paths to discovering data, which has actually given my team clues on, maybe we should get that data in the CRM for the salespeople to see, so that it's not just the CSMs and CSEs bringing that over to the salespeople. And that's helped a little bit. I don't know how well I answered your question there, but
no, I think that was good. It's also obviously every business is going to be unique and specific. And I'm just thinking in a lot of cases, the usage data is predominantly a CS metric than everything else. And obviously in your case, it's not as valuable the whole way through. But in a lot of cases, and I was just trying to think about that avenue for listeners that are working in businesses where they're not sign up for a demo, open source product led in the same way.
Let me address that, because Vercel's interesting because we have an open source product called Next.js. That's totally free. That's a coding framework. You write your website in that. Then we have Vercel, and Vercel is how you take code like Next.js and publish it to the internet and collaborate with it, collaborate on it with your teammates. So Vercel has a freemium version too. So we have 2 free products now. We have a self-serve version on our Pro plan, and then we have the enterprise version. So with the free and self-serve versions, we get a lot of that. That's where the usage data is very interesting, even beyond the trial. Even for customers who've been with us a year, if suddenly a startup has a massive spike in traffic and they're adding tons of team seats, maybe they're like us, where we were humming along low resources, and now we have resources and growth and attention, and we're grabbing it. That's when it's like, okay, let's talk to them. Let's figure out if we can help right size them on plan and make sure they're successful. Hope that adds more color.
Yeah, no, they're really, really helpful. I think it's just obviously key data, and it's often just hard to figure out how to get hold of in a meaningful way. And so, really helpful to understand some of the ways you and the team have been doing that across the whole go-to-market teams, and to really help them make the most of that. Mm-hmm. Particularly critical for anything when you need to lead product-led, which goes along a number of lines. So thanks. That was. And
interestingly, I also for ABM, which in some ways is the opposite of PLG, the account-based stuff. Another thing that's been around forever, but now it's got a fancy acronym. There are ways to go out in the world and figure out who's using your free products, who's using your open source stuff, and how can we help them? Why aren't we getting them as customers, and how can we target them? So there's some interesting stuff there too.
Oh yeah, no, fascinating. Thank you very much. I think it's time to bring Tom back.
Amazing. Thank you, Hank. I have the final and most important question of the interview. Who in the world of revenue or marketing ops would you most like to take for lunch?
Someone that I did take for dinner a few years ago and really gave me great advice was Michael Schiff, who did a lot of this type of stuff at MySQL years and years ago, and then later at Heroku. So he's a wonderful guy. I'd say him.
Shout out to Michael. Hank, thank you so much. It's been pretty eye-opening to see the RevOps/marketing ops process at a company with such a large volume, I guess, of PQLs. I love the insight about stalking almost what the best rep is doing, automating and then democratizing. I think that's an awesome insight, and I'm sure it's going to add value to the listeners. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Tom and Alex.